Sometimes unscrupulous people come together as if they are drawn to one another, and of course one should not expect good things from them. In today's story, however, such ruthless individuals are introduced that they were even able to get along well. Amy Fisher was born on August 21, 1974, in the city of Merrick, New York, USA. She was the only child in the family. Amy's parents married when her mother was 21, and her fiancé was already 38. Amy's mother became his third wife. The couple seemed to form a perfectly normal family. A short time later, they had a little girl, Amy, who was somewhat shy and modest, but at the same time, many people considered her to be a bit of a tomboy. This trait was not too pronounced, though it only emphasized her childhood image. The Fisher family was fairly well off and spoiled their only daughter in her early years, but the child always felt a bit lonely. They never refused her anything, yet they both worked a lot and spent little time with Amy. As a result, she developed a close relationship with her grandmother and her aunt. Her father was strict and quite rigid. He often punished his wife and daughter for any wrongdoing. The girl was even afraid of him. There were frequent arguments between her parents, and every time, Amy hoped that they would divorce. But her father was a strong manipulator and controlled his wife, so she simply feared a divorce. At a young age, Amy became a victim of rape. She was abused by a man close to the family when she was only 6 years old, but she told no one. Later, she was raped again at 13 by a worker who had been hired to repair the family home. She kept quiet about this too. All of this left the girl with severe psychological trauma. During her school years, Amy lived an otherwise normal teenage life. She had a close group of friends and a favorite dog that she walked every day. At that time, she dreamed of going to college and becoming a fashion designer so she could design clothes. For all who didn't know her well, Amy seemed just like a sweet girl who loved her dog. But for those who got to know her better, it quickly became clear that Amy had a rebellious side. She often got into trouble at school, skipped classes with her boyfriend, and occasionally forged school certificates. Shortly before graduation, she even got into a fight with an older girl, which ended with Amy in the hospital with a broken nose and a broken jaw. In February 1991, she ran away from home because she had had a phone argument with her mother while trying to stay overnight at a friend's house. When her father overheard the argument, he took the phone from her and warned her that he would punish her if she returned home after the overnight stay. Amy felt forced to wander around and stay for several days with various acquaintances and relatives. Because of her father's threats, she was afraid to go home. Meanwhile, her father filed a missing person report with the police, telling them his daughter was unstable, out of control, and even dangerous. Ultimately, the police brought the schoolgirl home. That same year, the girl learned she was pregnant, a huge shock for both her and her boyfriend. Thanks to her aunt, Amy was able to have an abortion without her parents knowing. Then, in May of the same year, as she was pulling her car out of the garage, she accidentally clipped the side mirror. Amy worried that her father would punish her for that. Previously, she had turned to a repair shop for a similar problem, where a skilled mechanic quickly fixed the car so her father wouldn't notice. This time, she went alone to the same repair shop, where she met the owner, Joey Buttafuoco, in what turned out to be a fateful encounter. Joey Buttafuoco was married to a woman named Mary Jo. She was the oldest of 5 daughters in a Catholic family living in a Long Island suburb of New York. They met in 1971 when they both attended high school and took summer courses. Joey was charming and funny, but he had lost his mother at age 11 and still felt that loss strongly as a teenager. His new girlfriend, Mary, supported him. When they met, they quickly developed a relationship and got along well. In 1977, they got married and bought a house near his family's auto repair shop. At that time, they worked hard during the day and had fun in the evenings. But this carefree existence ended when Mary got pregnant. It wasn't part of their plan. They had wanted to have children much later, when they were on a more solid footing. But circumstances changed, and Mary began adjusting to a more responsible adult life. The more she did this, the more she noticed Joey resisting. While his wife stayed at home resting, he went out partying as before. Mary didn't interfere, but waited for her husband to grow up and come to his senses. Soon, their first son, Paul, was born. At that point, Mary had given up her old lifestyle completely. She just wanted to be a good mother and wife, which stood in stark contrast to Joey's needs and desires. He continued spending his free time partying. By this point, he was even addicted to illegal substances. He left early in the morning for work and came back very late. Sometimes he stayed away 24 hours at a stretch, always with a believable excuse. He had no trouble lying. Mary endured this for a long time and hardly ever saw her husband, but her patience was wearing thin. She talked about divorce more and more often, but he always managed to calm her down. Soon, she got pregnant again, and the thought of divorce became even more unrealistic. In 1983, she gave birth to their daughter Jessica. She tried everything to keep up the appearance of an ideal family, but Joey continued to take illegal substances. This made Mary feel guilty, as though she had failed somehow. In this state, she developed real panic attacks that grew increasingly frequent. She saw a therapist who helped her cope, but that did nothing to solve her husband's uncontrollable behavior. All she could do was take the prescribed medication, keep caring for her children, and hope for the best. Gradually, she recognized the need to move back to the Long Island suburb they had lived in before, hoping to support Joey away from his auto shop, the parties, and the bad influences of his friends. She managed to convince him of the need to move, and the couple planned to buy a house. To Mary's surprise, her husband quickly found a buyer who offered to pay cash immediately for their current home. That seemed like good news. The family would soon be able to move. With everything packed, they waited for the money so they could leave for their new house. But on the day the buyer was supposed to show up, Joey confessed his deception. He admitted he had taken out a mortgage on the house and given all the money to his dealer because he owed so much for illegal substances that he had no choice but to mortgage the property to pay his debts. For a young family with 2 children, this news was devastating. They basically had no money and nowhere to go. However, they caught a break. Joey's father came to their aid and gave them the sum needed as a down payment on a house in Massapequa, a suburb on Long Island. But he did it for a reason. He saw that his son was not capable of running the family business and feared that he would lose the repair shop too. By providing the money, he effectively stripped Joey of his ownership rights in the family business, leaving him an ordinary employee at the shop. Even after all these events, Mary did not give up on him and forgave her husband. She signed him up for a rehab program, which fortunately worked. Joey got clean and didn't touch illegal substances anymore. The following years of married life were like a seemingly endless honeymoon. It looked as though Mary had managed to turn things around, and the couple finally got to enjoy happiness. But Mary had not counted on another woman entering their lives. In May 1991, Amy Fisher returned to the auto repair shop to have her car fixed, just as she had the year before. She didn't want her father to find out and had no money. She had to come up with a story. Joey agreed to help trick her father by saying that Amy had brought the car in for routine maintenance and that someone had hit the mirror overnight, ripping it off. The plan worked, and her father believed him. Amy felt drawn to Joey because he kept her out of trouble and away from her father's bullying. From then on, Amy's car came to the shop repeatedly for minor repairs, supposedly caused by little scrapes she intentionally inflicted so that she could see Joey more often. Of course, she was far too young for him. The age difference was nearly 20 years. Nevertheless, the teenage girl constantly flirted with the man. On July 2nd, she returned to the shop again, this time to have a sound system installed, which meant she would have to leave the car there for a few hours. Her father couldn't pick her up, so Joey called him, but he was busy too. Then Joey offered the girl a ride himself, and she agreed. On the way to her parents' house, the man asked if he could see it, and she agreed. That day, in her parents' home, they had their first intimate encounter. From that moment on, the girl saw Joey as her boyfriend. That same evening, they met again. Although she was only 16 and he 35, they went to a motel first. The affair lasted for a whole year. Amy kept showing up at Joey's workshop, and they met at motels and even in Amy's house. He seemed nice, but it was obvious he was taking advantage of her weaknesses. He knew about her complicated relationship with her father and recognized how vulnerable she was. Joey started buying her expensive gifts, taking her to restaurants and taking her out on his boat. Naturally, the young Amy was thrilled and in love with her lover. The age difference didn't bother her at all. Eventually, Amy turned 17 on August 21, 1991, a month after which she told Joey she needed money. By then, Joey had already lost his management position at the shop and couldn't give her the amount she wanted. So he came up with an unconventional suggestion. Joey believed she could earn good money selling her body. Amy agreed and became a call girl. Later, she admitted that Joey liked hearing stories about her serving other men. Their intimate relationship continued, but it was unhealthy, involving two unstable individuals. It was bound to end badly. Shortly before the tragic events, Joey insisted she break off contact with her Antone of her few supportive relatives. Amy agreed and was now isolated from all family support. Around this time, Amy demanded that Joey leave his wife, but her lover refused without even trying to soften the blow with an explanation. It turned out that, despite the affair with Amy, Joey loved Mary and the children and wasn't willing to leave his family. For Amy, this was a severe blow. She decided she would no longer see him. But sometime after the breakup, Amy attempted to end her life. Recognizing her attachment to him, she ended up continuing to see him. Around that same time, Joey started talking more and more about his failing marriage. He claimed to harbor such negative feelings for Mary that he said he wished she were dead. He claimed he had repeatedly caught Mary cheating on him and that she had tortured him in their marriage. At the same time, he invented different reasons why he couldn't file for divorce, usually citing the couple's children as the main obstacle. Amy believed him and sympathized with him, continuing the relationship. Gradually, these false stories morphed into a murder plot in Amy's mind. The plan was to shoot Mary so Joey could get rid of his hated wife. As it later emerged, Amy first tried to hire two classmates as hitmen, offering them $400 in sexual favors in return, but they turned her down, and the plan seemed to fail. Unexpectedly, the situation changed when Amy started going to a fitness studio and met the owner, a 30-year-old named Paul M. They began a relationship. Amy also met regularly with 3 other regular clients, offering them intimate services. By then, she had already left the agency and was dealing with clients directly. She eagerly told Paul all about her life, and he quickly saw what Joey was really doing. As a result, the fitness studio owner tried to talk Amy out of seeing the married man. Meanwhile, Joey got nervous when he heard about Amy's new affair, fearing he might lose his lover. He tried to intervene in her relationship with Paul but had no success. Now Paul and Amy wanted revenge on the auto mechanic. They planned to tell Mary about Joey's affair. Amy enlisted the help of a 21-year-old man named Peter G. to drive her to the family home. They stole license plates off some random car in town, intending to put them on Peter's car. On May 19, 1991, Amy went to school but had no intention of going to class. She went straight to the nurse's office, complained about feeling unwell, and was allowed to leave. Peter was already waiting for her in his car out front. They swapped the plates and drove to the Buttafuoco house. At 11:30 a.m., Amy knocked on the door. Mary was home alone, painting, so she answered. Amy asked her to come onto the porch to have an important conversation. She gave a fake name and claimed that Joey was having an affair with her 14-year-old sister, but Mary didn't believe her. She believed her husband had quit partying and had become a good family man. Amy got nervous and annoyed by Mary's skepticism. She showed her a t-shirt with the logo of Joey's auto shop, where her lover worked. Even then, Mary remained skeptical, arguing that this evidence meant nothing. An argument ensued. For 15 minutes, Amy tried everything she could to convince Mary of her husband's affair. Amy concealed her real address, her age, and her relationship with the mechanic, distorting the facts to make everything fit her story. Her lies seemed increasingly implausible. At some point, Mary simply turned and headed for the door, telling the girl to leave. It was clear she believed everything she'd heard was made up and was no longer willing to listen. This made Amy furious, and she pulled out a .25 caliber gun that Peter had given her. In her rage, she hit Mary twice on the head with it and then accidentally fired a shot that hit Mary in the head. The recoil was stronger than Amy expected, knocking her to the ground, and Mary fell on top of her. Amy pushed her away, got up immediately, and jumped into the car with her accomplice. She appeared frightened because she hadn't anticipated what happened. She admitted to Peter that the gun had gone off by accident. She'd only wanted to scare Mary. After fleeing the scene, they disposed of the gun and Amy's bloody clothes in a sewer near the girl's house. She then went home and spent the rest of the day as if nothing had happened. A passerby heard a loud bang and went over to check. He saw Amy fleeing. Mary was unconscious in a pool of blood on the porch. The man ran to a neighbor's house and called an ambulance. The paramedics arrived quickly and found that the bullet had hit one of Mary's vital arteries, as well as shattered her jaw. She had lost a great deal of blood and was in critical condition. Had it not been for the passerby's help, she would not have survived. At this point, the paramedics estimated her chances at 50-50 and took her to the hospital. The bullet was lodged near her spine and couldn't be removed. Mary was hooked up to life support, and surgery continued throughout the night. By some miracle, she regained consciousness a few days later and was able to give the police a description of her attacker. She repeated what the teenage girl had told her, but Amy had provided fake names and addresses, so that information was useless. However, among Mary's recollections was an important clue: the t-shirt with the logo of Joey's auto shop, which the attacker had shown her. The police went to see the mechanic. He said he had handed out many such t-shirts as advertising for the shop. He also gave them a photo of his underage lover that she had given him. Joey suspected she might be involved and gave the photo to the police, after which Mary recognized her attacker. In fact, Joey essentially turned his lover in. Just 2 days after the attack, on May 21st, Amy was arrested on the street near her home. She was interrogated for 12 hours without her parents or a lawyer present, even though she was underage. Her mother and father had no idea what had happened. They came home that night, assumed Amy had run away again, and didn't worry when she didn't come back. The police never informed them their daughter had been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. They only found out later, and the father was outraged by his daughter's behavior. As soon as the details of the crime became public, journalists were, of course, very interested in the 17-year-old student who led such a reckless, criminal lifestyle, and who had attacked a respectable married woman with a gun. The media was outraged. Reporters dug up whatever information they could find. They even released a video apparently showing Amy serving another client. 2 weeks after her arrest, Amy still had not confessed. She was kept in custody, and bail was set at $2 million. By this time, her case had become so famous that everyone wanted to interview her, write a book, or even make a film about the story of the new Long Island Lolita, as she was called. They paid high fees for this, so Amy had enough to post bail and await trial at home. The media attention, however, severely damaged her reputation. Now everyone knew how she had made her money through illegal activities. Amy insisted that all these illegal things happened because Joey had pressured her into selling her body at such a young age. That was the main claim her lawyers used to build her defense, but Joey denied it all. Mary also got pulled into appearing on various TV shows, but only because she needed money for her massive medical bills. Joey continued to deny any affair with Amy. However, 13 motel receipts were found for nights he had spent with his underage lover, proving their secret relationship. Several staff members also confirmed that the two were regular motel guests. Amy testified against him in court. Handwriting experts from the FBI ultimately proved that the signatures on the motel receipts were indeed Joey's. This confirmed Amy's claims of a secret relationship. Despite this evidence, Joey kept insisting it had all been staged. Even his wife refused to believe Amy, and they both openly ridiculed her in police interviews. While Amy was out on bail and waiting for her trial to begin, she wasted no time preparing her defense. She spent all her bail money and had nothing left to pay her lawyer, who continued to represent her for free. Rumors circulated that she slept with her defense attorney, who apparently had strong feelings for her. He supposedly sent her poems and love letters. But her attempts at seduction were unnecessary for achieving an acquittal. Following her lawyer's advice, Amy accepted a plea deal with the prosecution. Considering the possession of a weapon and her motive, it would have been difficult to prove she fired it by accident, so acquittal was unlikely. On September 23, 1992, she pleaded guilty to first-degree attempted murder. She was 18 at the time. The girl insisted she had been angry at Joey and wanted to get back at him. She claimed she only attacked Mary because Mary wouldn't listen to her, and when Mary turned away, she hit her twice with the gun, which accidentally discharged after the second blow. The bullet struck her in the head. Amy maintained that she hadn't meant to kill her, that it was all a terrible accident she deeply regretted. Later, journalists found out that Amy had had an intimate relationship with fitness studio owner Paul M. He took advantage of the situation to draw media attention to himself. He even set up a hidden camera in his fitness studio when he invited the girl in for a private talk. Amy confided all sorts of things to him, including her wish to marry Paul so she could get conjugal visits in prison. She also openly admitted she enjoyed the media spotlight and that they paid well. She wanted to buy a Ferrari with the money. When Amy found out that Paul had betrayed her too, she attempted suicide again. She was then placed in a psychiatric hospital, where she spent several months. On December 2nd, Amy appeared in court to hear her sentence. At the hearing, Mary spoke out against a recording Paul had made and played in court, in which Amy said she was profiting from the crime. It seemed she felt no remorse, contradicting her story of an accidental gunshot. Mary considered the plea deal unfair, as it allowed Amy to be released after just 2 years and 9 months, which didn't fit the severity of the crime. By some miracle, Mary had survived the shooting, but her face remained partially paralyzed. Mary also lost her hearing on the right side, and because the bullet was lodged near her spine, she constantly suffered pain and experienced vision problems. Worst of all, the doctors saw an ongoing risk of complete paralysis, or even death, if the projectile shifted in any way. When the defendant was given the final word, she apologized and put all the blame on Joey, insisting he had known from the start about the plan to kill his wife and had encouraged her in every way possible. By saying this, Amy essentially admitted that she had intended from the outset to kill Mary. It became clear it was not an accident. Several witnesses came forward, saying Amy had asked them to shoot Mary. They said she had always wished for her death and hated her lover's wife. The forensic evidence confirmed the weapon was functional, and based on the bullet's trajectory and the way it struck, it could not have discharged by accident. Another suspicious detail was that Amy and her accomplice, Peter, had carefully prepared for this trip. Why else would they switch license plates and bring a firearm? It clearly looked like the planned murder it was. During the trial, Mary read a letter from her 9-year-old daughter, who begged her to keep Amy in prison as long as possible so she couldn't hurt her mother again. These words were a devastating blow for Amy. In light of everything, the hope of being released after 2 years and 9 months vanished. Amy had to plead guilty to first-degree assault and was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5. The judge described Amy's behavior as that of a wild animal stalking its prey, driven by lust and passion. Peter G., the 21-year-old who drove her to the Botafogo house, was arrested and charged with aiding the crime. He received 6 months in prison. Meanwhile, the prosecutor announced that authorities would not bring any charges against Joey, since Amy's statements were deemed unreliable. The auto mechanic then tried to restore his reputation, which had been damaged by the media. He took an active role in the matter, appearing on various TV programs with his wife, where he continued to declare his innocence. The couple organized a small press tour, appearing on several television stations across the country. During that time, the district attorney's office received dozens of calls from angry citizens who believed that Joey should also stand trial, since many viewed him as indirectly involved. A few months later, even employees at the family's auto shop confronted him, stating they had personally heard him bragging about sleeping with a 16-year-old student. Law enforcement could no longer ignore these allegations. In April of that year, he was arrested and charged with statutory rape and endangering the welfare of a child. He agreed to a plea deal, admitted his guilt, and was sentenced to only 6 months, plus a $5,000 fine. And he even made good money off the whole affair, showing up to his sentencing in a flashy outfit and an expensive car, giving the impression he was on his way to the Oscars. Surrounded by supporters chanting his name, he declared he had been unfairly convicted because of a lying student who had betrayed him. Joey said he had sacrificed 6 months of his freedom just to settle the matter by pleading guilty. He ultimately spent only 4 months in prison before being released, but his legal troubles were not over. In 1995, Joey was arrested in Los Angeles for soliciting prostitution. He again maintained he was innocent, insisting the police had set him up in retaliation. As he was still on probation, he had to serve another 75 days in jail. These events drove Mary into a deep depression. She became addicted to medications that dulled her constant pain. When the family moved to Los Angeles, the victim of the shooting also developed alcoholism. She later went to rehab and managed to improve her life. Amy's time in prison was difficult. She claimed she was raped several times by guards and managed to sneak her underwear out to her mother for testing. The tests showed Amy's claims of having had intercourse were true, but given her reputation, no one believed she had been forced. She kept asking to be transferred to another facility, but the prison administration refused. In 1999, Amy was granted parole after 7 years. At a meeting with the parole board, she tearfully admitted that the attack on her lover's wife had been solely her idea. She finally realized what she had done and was released. Following these events, Mary repeatedly accused her husband of infidelity. She could no longer tolerate his endless escapades, and they divorced in 2003 after 26 years of marriage. Around that time, Joey was arrested for trying to commit insurance fraud with his car. He had learned nothing his whole life. He attempted acting and tried to become famous on TV, but found no real success. He remarried and still lives a rather eccentric lifestyle. After the divorce, Mary had surgery on her face, allowing her to smile normally again. Her hearing was partially restored, and her children supported her during this time. In 2009, she wrote a book telling the story of her life. For years, she had hated Amy for entering her life and shooting her. During therapy, Mary realized it was time to leave the past behind and stop tormenting herself. She managed to forgive the crazy Amy for everything. In 2010, Mary remarried and moved to California. She became a grandmother and now enjoys a peaceful life. After her release from prison, Amy moved to Florida, wrote 2 books about her life, and tried to get publicity and earn money. She even made a fake video claiming she and Joey were back together, but the public had lost interest, and her plan to become famous again failed. Amy began working as a webcam model and performing in adult films, appearing frequently on talk shows to share her story. Later, she married a former New York City police officer and had 3 children, but that marriage didn't work out, and they divorced in 2015. Their oldest son stayed with his father, while Amy returned with her other 2 children to Long Island, moving into her mother's house. She briefly worked as a stripper before leaving that job, Yet she still works as a webcam model. Her ex-husband disapproves, suggesting she buy a smaller house in the middle of nowhere, find a normal job, and live more modestly, but she refuses. Amy enjoys this life, though she now tries to keep her webcam activities secret so her children won't be hurt by it. They've already been ridiculed at school because of their mother's violent past. She changed her name to Fox to avoid media attention. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourselves.